Hi, Christie.
Hi, Jeff.
We're recording now.
The many hours of conversation you and I have had, we've had probably half of them that haven't been recorded.
You know what we should do? We should start a podcast.
You think? Let's call it The Why and the Buy.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, to the Why and the Buy podcast. As always, I am Jeff Bajorek here with the lovely Christie Walters. How are you, Christie?
I am doing lovely. Thank you, Jeff.
I am so glad to hear that. You know, I tend to pay pretty close attention to when things pop up over and over in rapid succession. So when themes present themselves over and over a couple times within the past couple of days, as they have, I thought I'd take the opportunity to bring it up on this podcast today. And it's kind of an in-between-isode. If you're a Tim Ferriss follower, I think we'll call them mini-sodes, kind of more brief and to-the-point discussions about a topic. But I want to talk today about the topic of reliability.
Okay. So it sounds like you've had some inspiration. So tell us what brought this up for you?
You know, I spend a fair amount of time in my car traveling. I do some consulting work for some clients out of state. And when I drive, I listen to podcasts. I listen to sports radio. I listen to as many commercial-free outlets as possible. But something had come up across a couple of different themes, across a couple of different areas of my life, and that was this concept of reliability. So when you listen to sports talk radio, there's always some Monday morning quarterbacking going on. There is some analysis. A lot of times it's ad nauseum analysis, but someone had an opinion of just the outcome of a game, a recent game had come about. And the idea was that this backup was in the game. And if this backup was reliable in any way, just competent at all, then the team would have been able to come through. But the team could not rely on a very crucial position to perform their duty. And in that way, it reminded me of really a bunch of things. There is the first day that I started in sales, my manager looked at me and said, "Jeff, you will be surprised how successful you can be if you return phone calls and return emails and just show up every day." And I thought, okay, you don't have to be a superstar, but in some ways you can be a superstar just by doing the things your customer needs them to do. Needs you to do. A couple of months later, I was working with, spending the day with another regional manager for a company I was representing at the time, and he said, "Jeff, I know you're new to this. I've been doing this for 15 years. You will be shocked at the amount of mediocrity that is out there that disguises itself as successful." And at the time, I'm 6 months into a selling career. The only thing I ever know how to do is be really good at what I do. So, okay, I'll keep that in my mind somewhere, but I'm just going to go out and try to be a rock star. And through the years and through my experience, I've found that there really is a lot of mediocrity out there. There are a ton of people who you can't get a return phone call from. And Christie, to you and me, that sounds like the most basic of things. And when I talk about reliability and the importance of reliability, and when you talk about those things that many of us just take for granted, when you take them for granted, sometimes you forget how important they are. I think that's actually the definition of taking something for granted, right? And so with a theme like that coming up over and over again, and I've been writing about it, and this is just something that I think is worth talking about today. So how do you feel? What do those statements make you feel like?
Oh, I would have to agree wholeheartedly. It's amazing the number of people that I coach from time to time who have lost sight of what it means to be reliable, or even be present, right? So in a lot of cases, I think as you get to the mid-level of your career, you get stuck in a rut. Sometimes things you don't have the passion maybe you had when you were in your 20s. And so that tends to weigh you down. And you tend to think about all of these complicated things you need to do, this education you need to get, or relationship you need to build, and you forget about the customers you have already, or the people you have in your life already, and the investment that you need to make in them. And sometimes it's just a matter of responding. but being consistent and persistent in that response so that people know where you stand. They know how to take you, right? A customer knows that if you're not calling them back in an hour, they don't need to call back again because they believe you're reliable enough that they're going to get a call before the end of the day.
Well, and what you're talking about there is a huge factor in terms of growing a business, and that is trust, right? Mm-hmm. The way you build loyalty is by being trustable, and the way you grow a business over time is by building loyalty. I mean, think about how hard it is to grow. Think about how much harder it is to grow when you're losing customers on the back end, right? Yeah. I mean, rule number one, keep your customers, right? They keep your customers. Right. They don't just keep them happy, keep them thrilled. And the best way to do that is to over-deliver on expectations. The best way to over-deliver on expectations is to do the simple things that nobody else is doing. And when you find out that the simple difference sometimes between what you're doing and what your competitors are doing is that you know when to call and you always call back, those are so simple.
Yeah, right. Man, anyone can do them, right?
Anybody can do them. That is not a talent. That is a skill that's really not even that hard to train yourself on. And those are the things that we just give away. And think about it this way, too. How many times have you been in the right place at the right time with a customer, whether it's them passing on a new opportunity, whether you show up for a meeting a few minutes early and they're just talking about something else, and then your presence there reminds them of a way that you could help or a way that you could benefit from the deal. I have a friend of mine I used to work with, and his kind of catchphrase was "must be present to win," and he was trying to be everywhere all the time. And ubiquity is very, very difficult, but he just said, look, if I don't show up, I'm going to miss opportunities. If I don't call back, I'm going to miss those opportunities. If I don't fulfill the very basic expectations of me, then I'm going to miss those opportunities. And growth is hard enough on its own. I can't be giving stuff away.
Yeah, so we have talked about this before. I had a sales manager earlier on in my career who talked about how persistent, consistent communication was critical to establishing a strong customer base. And it has stuck with me in a way that I'm not sure he even really understood. This happens to be the sales manager that also introduced me to Jeffrey Gitomer's work, which has in turn created a ton of opportunity for myself and my business over the years. But just that ability to be consistent and reliable and just someone that your customer knows they can count on. And it's not just about your customer, it's about your friends, it's about your colleagues, your family. Being persistent and consistent in the way that you deal with people is critical. And it takes away this concept of mediocrity. We've talked about that quite a bit, of what you see an awful lot, especially in mid career salespeople. You get tired. Mm-hmm. And you just don't have you don't have that passion and drive you had when you were 25, but you do have the ability to continue to be consistent. And you have already established, if you've done the right thing, you've already established a good network of customers and referrals that you can rely on, so that you can kind of build yourself back up if you need a little jump start every now and then in your career. So, I think there's a lot to be said on this topic.
Well, you've got to remember your fundamentals, and you've got to remember the baseline and the foundation for what makes you successful in the first place. And business, sales especially, is a people business. It's a person-to-person business, whether it's B2B, B2C, however you want to define it. It's always person-to-person. At least until we're all replaced by androids and robots, Christie. But, at this point, we have to remember that we can't get so caught up in the business-y part of it that we aren't aware of the people skills part of it. Yeah. And it does not take a tremendous amount of skill to return a phone call. The light blinks on your phone, right? Or you get the little red dot on your phone that says someone called you and left you a message. Just follow the signals. I mean, you're even reminded, right? It's to ignore some of that simple stuff. And I think that we just get carried away thinking about how great we have to be, that we remember how great you can be by just being good at a lot of the basic things.
Yeah.
Cover your fundamentals. Be the person that can be trusted because you do what you're asked to do when you say you are going to do it. And if you can be reliable like that, I think you're gonna do very, very well for yourself. So
yeah, I would agree. And I love that concept of must be present to win, because calling me back and not paying attention to the conversation because you're not present in that conversation isn't the same thing. That's not reliable. That's checking me off your list. So I love that phrase of you must be present to win, because it is so true.
Well, I don't think Andy knew how profound he was being when he said that, and he says it all the time. But you're right. I mean, you've got to be.
Shout out to Andy.
That's right. Shout out to Andy. You know, not only do you need to be a person in a space, but you need to be literally present and aware of where you are in that space too. Yeah. And it's about listening. It's about connecting. It's about awareness of what's going on around you too. But being able to pay attention to those signals without being distracted from what is most important. So when you are out there, anybody who's listening right now, when you are out there, make sure you remember where you are, make sure you remember what you're doing, and make sure you remember the basic things that keep you going, because you can't afford to take those for granted. Sometimes those are the only things you need to do in order to be that much better than any one of your competitors. Yeah. So keep that stuff in mind, and I think you're going to have, you'll probably see a lot of immediate success.
Must be present to win. Love it.
I love it too.
So speaking of connecting, I wanted to just talk really quickly, Jeff. We are encouraged by the feedback and the enthusiasm of our audience. So we would really love to encourage those of you guys that are listening to us on a regular basis. We are always looking for guest hosts. If you have a topic that you'd like to talk about or you're very passionate about, especially as it relates to the why in your life, we would love to hear from you. We'd also love to hear from you whether you would, even if you don't want to come on the podcast, would like for us to tackle a particular topic. We have a long list of topics that we're working on right now, and we are not opposed to moving things around and shoving something that seems to make sense at the time in where it needs to go. So we'd love to hear from you. You can email us at thewhyandthebuy@gmail.com. You can connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn at our website at thewhyandthebuy.com. And of course, as always, subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts today. And remember to like and comment for us. That helps us tremendously in our rankings on iTunes as well.
Basically, if you like what we're doing, please tell us.
Yes.
If you don't like what we're,
and if you don't like what we're doing, tell us that too.
Yeah, look, we love doing this, and quite frankly, Christie and I record these conversations because we know they will be valuable to other people. They may not be valuable to you. If not, that's fine. It doesn't even hurt our feelings. But we do this because we know that it does help a lot of people. And if there's something else that you'd like some help with, then let us know. Because most importantly, and we say this every week, when you know your whys, your hows and your whats get much better. So come back and see us next week. Come back and listen to us next week, and we'll talk to you then.
See you, Jeff.
Bye, Christie.
You don't remember, but I warned you it is.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Why and the Buy podcast. If you liked us, subscribe. We can be found on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, SoundCloud, and really anywhere else you can get a podcast. And if you really liked us, then give us a 5-star review. We like those, and we like you too. Here at the Why and the Buy podcast, we've got our own house band. Christie and I think they're absolutely perfect for what we're trying to do with this podcast, and we hope you think so too. If you like them as much as we do, then you should check them out. They're called Haskins, and they're based in southeastern Michigan. You can find their music and more at haskinsmusic.com. Go check them out.